Alrighty then. Well, there's been a little thunderstorm here. The rain is coming down just gently now. Outside, the mosquitoes are wild. They're all on the window screens and stuff. Looking in here, wanting to get in and bite Rocky and I, no doubt. But, anyway, uh, hmm. anyway, yeah, it was weird. The picture froze up there. But anyway, I'm watching a documentary right now about the death of Canada. And I mean, Canada is a dying country. There's no question about that. But, of course, we're blaming Trump. Trump's at fault for everything. But our government has successfully manipulated most of the people into believing that Donald Trump is destroying Canada, which is total bull. But anyway, they're blaming him for what they themselves have done, for their policies, for their economic policies and their social policies and so on. They have destabilized Canada to the point where it can do nothing but collapse. I'll make an analogy. People who take down big buildings, people who are in that business of taking down big buildings. Itchy, got fur in my nose. I actually got cat fur in my nose and stuff, and clinging to my face and stuff. Anyway, people who take down big buildings for a living, they call it implosion. They implode big buildings, cause them to basically pancake, come down onto themselves and fall in their own footprint. There's a high degree of skill involved in doing that, and there's a lot of planning, and there's a lot of preparatory work that is done prior to the day of demolition. These are highly skilled professionals who do this kind of work, and they have to be, because it's actually very dangerous work. If you get people in there doing this kind of work who don't know what they're doing, that can be really bad. So you got to have people, because they're dealing with explosives. They're taking down skyscrapers and stuff, and they're often doing it in very populated places. They're taking down a skyscraper that's just a few feet away from another skyscraper and stuff. So they have to really know what they're doing, and they do. They do know what they're doing, these people, and if you look at that process, how it actually happens, and what's involved, and what they do to take down a skyscraper, it goes on for weeks before the actual day that they take the building down. They're in there for several weeks prepping the building to be taken down, and that involves going in and cutting through, or at least partially cutting through, main supports and so on. And of course, they know exactly where to cut in order, and how far to cut, in order that the building will come down smoothly when they set off the charges. They also know where to place the charges so that will happen. But they know where to cut and how far to cut and where to place the charges and all the rest of it to bring the building down smoothly and to have it fall in its own footprint. And, they know how to do all that. And that's what they do. They spend weeks doing that. And they don't just go in, the day of the demolition, plant some dynamite here and there and come out and set it off. That would be a real disaster if they did that. It'd be really bad. So that they cut through things enough that the building isn't going to collapse on its own, but when the dynamite goes off, it is going to collapse. It's going to do what they want it to do. Well, I would submit to you that our government here in Canada, and also the U.S. government up until recently, the U.S. government, especially under Obama and Biden, have done the same thing. What they've done is they've destabilized the country. They've made it so that the country can be brought down very easily. They've done this in the United States. They've done it in Canada too. Our government, our Trudeau government, and now the Carney government is continuing the process. They've basically destroyed the main supports that hold the country up. They've destroyed our economy. They've completely turned our social structure up on its head. They've caused rampant drug abuse. Okay, Rocky. They've caused rampant drug abuse. They've okay. I can't breathe when he gets this close. You gotta back up a bit, sweetheart. I'm sorry. Anything at all that blocks the airflow, even something away from my face, it doesn't even have to be right on my face. It makes it hard for me to breathe. Anyway, let me get up here. Okay. Here's the thing, though. He's caused rampant. Okay, just stay there, sweetie. They've caused all these issues anyway. People are dying. Crime is through the roof, especially violent crime. A lot of these drugs that they've introduced into the population that people are using now, because our government has brought them in, the so-called safe supply drugs. There's an oxymoron for you, safe supply. But anyway, those drugs, I got another tick. Hold on a minute here. We got a tick off, Rocky. I'm ticking you off, aren't I, Rocky? I am. Okay. Anyway, I better get rid of this tick. Okay, you got to get up, sweetheart, or I got to get up. There you go. Go that way. Sorry about the shaky camera work and all the trouble with my breathing and so on. Okay, you got to get up. You got to let me get up, sweetie. Okay, here we go now. I've got a tick here. I don't want to hold the tick in my hand too long so that it can bite me. I find if I leave them in the fur and put them in the slop water there, that seems to work good. Anyway, here's the bottom line with all this. Sorry about just sorry about everything. This is turning out real bad, this video. But anyway, the bottom line is this. Our government has done this to us. That the drugs, even that they've put out there as part of this so-called safe supply, which is a joke. Not a funny joke, but a joke just the same. People act pretty friggin' weird on those drugs, I'll tell you. And, people become irrational, they become erratic, they become violent. And then random people on the street, well, they get attacked. People are being murdered on the streets because of it. People are being, the drug addicted people themselves are dying because of it. They're dying. This is the so-called, what they call a safe supply. There's nothing safe about it. But again, it's being done to destabilize the country. The same is being done with the social order and so on. The promotion of mental illness as a superpower. Yeah, being mentally ill is a superpower. No, it isn't. If you're mentally ill, you're afflicted. It's an affliction. It's not a superpower. Let's get that straight right now. Whenever I hear people say this stuff, mental illness is a superpower. No, it is not. It's an affliction. People who suffer from mental illness they do not have a superpower. What they have is a terrible affliction. If you're going around, oh damn, there's another tick. If you're going around thinking that, thinking delusional thoughts, hearing voices, I don't know, all the things that go with mental illness, what you have is an affliction. It affects your life. It affects your ability to function with any... Okay, I got to get back up. I got 2 ticks this time. Okay. Um, there's 2 ticks now encased in fur that have to go into the slop water, Rocky. Damn it all, anyway. The treatment didn't seem to work this time. Anyway, the bottom line is this. I keep saying that. I'm sorry. I'm just distracted and discombobulated right now. I got too many things happening at once. But anyway, the thing is, though, this promotion of sexual deviancy, pushing sexual deviancy on our kids and so on. Right now, we're going to have a festival here in Smiths Falls this weekend, and it's called the Pink Pony Festival. And this is to celebrate the gay and trans and all that. In Canada now, they want to make the entire season of summer from June to September Pride season. They're pushing all this stuff in the schools and everything. Even in kindergarten, they're pushing all the gay stuff. Yeah, kindergarten children shouldn't even know anything about gay or straight or anything else. You know, kindergarten children don't need to know about that stuff. Why are we sexualizing little kids? What good does that do? What purpose does it serve? It encourages acceptance and prevents them from growing up to be bigots. No, it doesn't. I mean, all it does is subject them to things that they don't need to be subjected to. They're too young, you know. A 5-year-old doesn't need to know about sexual things. When I was 5 years old, I knew that boys and girls are different. I knew that. I knew that, that the parts were different, the genitals are different, and so on. I didn't know why. I had no idea why they were different. I did know that women have babies and men don't. I knew that. I didn't know anything about sex. I didn't know how sexual intercourse worked or anything like that. And I didn't know that in some cases, men prefer to be with other men that way, and women prefer to be with other women that way. Now, and it didn't hurt me any not to know any of that. In time, I found these things out as I grew up and as I got older and so on, and I was more ready to know about them. I found out that men and women do certain things together, that men and women like to do those things together, and that men or women are built for that purpose. I found that out. I found out that in some cases, men do these things with men or women do these things with women. As I grew up, I found these things out. But I didn't know any of that when I was 5, and I didn't need to know any of that when I was 5, you know? And no, it didn't turn me into an intolerant bigot not knowing about this stuff. I've never advocated for violence to be directed towards homosexuals or transsexuals. I've been accused of advocating for that by not embracing the movement. But that's just people, again, who are operating on an emotional level and not operate. The same people that will tell you mental illness is a superpower will tell you that anyone who doesn't embrace this movement, this pride movement, is a hateful bigot who wants to murder all the gay people and all that, No. I think live and let live is how we should go. If a man prefers other men, that's his business, If a woman prefers other women, that's her business. If a man prefers women, that's his business. If a woman prefers men, that's her business. Really, it's between the individual and whoever they are involved with, And just like I wouldn't go up to a 5-year-old, I don't have a lot of sexual experience with women because women have never really cared for me much. But I do have a little bit of experience that way with women, going back to when I was younger. Again, not a lot, but a little bit, And I have had sex, although, like I say, a long time ago. And but I wouldn't think of going up to a 5-year-old and telling a 5-year-old, you know, about having sex and what it's like to have sex with a woman as a man and so on. That's information a 5-year-old doesn't need. You know, that's a corrupting thing. I'd be corrupting a child by doing that. And I wouldn't be corrupting a child because sex is corrupt. I'd be corrupting a child because it would be information beyond the scope of what that child needs to know at this point in his life. Let the kid be 5 years old. You're only 5 years old once. You know, let the kid be 5 years old. When he's 5, he can know about the things that 5-year-olds should know about. When he's 15, he can know about the things 15-year-olds should know about. And when he's 25, he should know about the things 25-year-olds should know about. And the thing is, that's how it was for me, and it was fine. You know? And no, I'm not a hateful bigot who wants to hurt homosexuals. That just isn't the case. I just don't like being bombarded with it constantly. And I know what it is, though. It's part of the destabilization of society. The same thing has been done, like I say, by Obama and then Biden in the U.S., in the United States. That's been done by Trudeau and now Carney here. It's all part of the destabilization of society. It's all part of that process of sawing through the underpinnings of the building and planting the charges in just the right place, that on the day you push that plunger down, the building's going to come down the way you want it to. It's all part of taking the country down. You know, they say build back better. Well, okay, you've got a high rise. Let's say you've got Cabrini Green in Chicago. Cabrini Green in Chicago, for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure many of you do, but for those of you who don't know, that was the projects. Anybody who remembers the show Good Times? Remember JJ on Good Times? Well, where they lived was Cabrini Green. What they called the projects. They were living in the projects, you know, what they were talking about in Chicago. They were talking about Cabrini Green. That's where they were at in that story. It was a failed experiment. It went really badly. It was very unsafe. Terrible things happened there. And ultimately, the buildings fell into terrible disrepair. On top of that, they become structurally and they become unsafe. They become places that were unsafe because of crime and also because the buildings themselves had deteriorated to the point where they were no longer safe because they weren't maintained. Because unfortunately, in this society, in this North American society, anything that's there for the poor is poorly maintained. You know, the budget is never there to keep it up properly. And on top of that, there's always a lot of graft, so there's always a lot of theft, a lot of grift, a lot of graft, a lot of theft. And so even the money that's there, most of it doesn't go into maintaining the thing that's there for the poor people. And so it deteriorates, and that's what happened with Cabrini Green. Between the crime and the actual deterioration of the high-rises themselves, you know. So what did they do? They said, this is a disaster. We can't go on this way. This is really bad. So we're going to take it down. See, we're going to build back better. That's what it boiled down to. We're going to build back better. We're going to try and find a better solution. Because this solution that we came up with in the 60s and 70s, when we built Cabrini Green, hasn't worked. And so they sent the demolition crew in, and they sawed through the underpinnings in just the right way, and they planted the charges in just the right way, and they went into all these buildings and they took them down. You see, that's what they did. And they changed the way they were doing things. And apparently the community that's there now is still for poor people, but it's a better community than the one that existed in the 60s and 70s and 80s and into the 90s. That was called Cabrini Green. So I've heard. Now I don't know. I've never been there. I can't tell you that it's better from my own experience. I've just heard that it's better. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's bad, just as bad in the same way, or maybe it's just as bad in different ways. I don't know. But I've heard that it's better. Anyway, there's definitely an attempt to make it better. Whether it succeeded or not, I don't know. I only know through hearsay. But the bottom line is this. That's a build back better thing. We're going to build back better. Well, what they want to do is they want to do the whole country. They want to, what they call, build back better. Only their intentions are not to build back better for us. Their intentions are to build back better for them. And that's why they're encouraging drug abuse. And of course, drug abuse brings mental illness with it. They're calling mental illness a superpower. They're pushing all forms of sexual deviancy. They're sexualizing children. It's really bizarre. It's all stuff that we would never have thought of doing 40 years ago. Now, that's not to say that we were perfect 40 years ago, because we weren't. We had a lot of problems. Society 40 years ago, and I remember it as it was. I lived in that society 40 and 50 years ago. I remember it well. And yeah, we had bad problems. But, even our problems made more sense than what is considered normal now. You could at least understand how these problems came to be, and then you could work on fixing them. How do you even fix a mess like what we've got now? I mean, the first thing you got to do is understand it. And where do you even begin to understand it? Where do you even begin to understand sending a 5-year-old to kindergarten and the 5-year-old being exposed to LGBTQ stuff? Yeah, how do you even begin to understand that? I can't understand it. The only understanding I have of it is that it's part of the process of destabilizing society. Just like you destabilize a high-rise building before you blow it up, before you implode it and cause it to come down in its own footprint. And you do it it's all by design. It's done in a specific way by people who know what they're doing. Other than making that equivalency in my mind and saying, okay, they're trying to take the country down. They're trying to take society down because they want to build some new country or some new society or some new world that they say will be better. And it will be better, but it won't be better for you and I. That's the thing. That's the key to the whole thing. It's going to be better to just a handful of elites who are pushing the agenda. And what's really frightening is the average person's going along with it, though. If you question any of this stuff, you get attacked by your fellow citizens. If you say, why does a 5-year-old need to be subjected to the pride flag? Why do we have to have pride flags on display in the classrooms and stuff? We're told we're bigoted and we're hateful for asking that question. I think it's a legitimate question. Why do we have to have transsexuals reading the 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 4-year-olds in the library? Why do we have to have that? What's the purpose of it? Well, it's to encourage inclusivity. And okay, but why the little kids? Why the little kids? Why do they have to be exposed to this? It's like, basically the way I look at it is, if you have children, you can teach your children not to be bullies and not to be jerks without having to expose them to certain things. You can do it by your own example and how you live and how you treat others. And you can do it by telling them too. And especially if you see them going down that road of being a bully, you can talk to them. You can say, "Hey, I noticed that you've been doing this lately, and I'm wondering what's going on. Why have you begun picking on such and such a person, or whatever?" And you can have that conversation with them, and you can listen to them. You can hear them out. You can hear the reasons, if they can give you any, of why they're doing it, of why they have decided that that's a good thing to do, and then you can correct the behavior. And you can do so in such a way that the child understands that his behavior in doing that is wrong. And, you know, and that the child will turn things around and will endeavor to stop engaging in that bullying behavior. And you can apply that across the board. Look, I mean, if I had a kid, I wouldn't care why he was bullying somebody. If my kid was a bully, that would upset me, and I would want that to stop. I'd want to turn it around. I don't care if he's bullying somebody because they're gay, or he's bullying somebody because they're a different race, or he's bullying somebody because they have less than he has. Maybe their clothes aren't as good or whatever, whatever it is. I don't care. Don't bully people. It's wrong. And so, and I think that that's how you instruct children. You don't have to propagandize children. You don't have to expose children to things that aren't age appropriate for them. You got to meet a child on the child's level, And a 5-year-old isn't ready to know all the details of every little thing, Like I say, when I was 5, I didn't know the details of every little thing, and it was fine. I didn't need to know. And as the need arose to know things, well, then I did know them. I mean, obviously, if I've had sex with a woman, I figured out how that works, or I wouldn't have been able to do it. So, like I say, but I wasn't having sex when I was 5. See, the knowledge wasn't required. That's the bottom line. The knowledge wasn't required. And we need just to apply a little common sense. That's all. And I'm seeing a lot of what's happening is just pure destabilization, cutting out the underpinnings of society, taking down the economy, bankrupting us, causing all kinds of weird moral dilemmas that we shouldn't even have to be dealing with. You know, we need some common sense. Our government is doing this to us. And yet so many people are going along with it. Oh, it's wonderful. It isn't wonderful. You're being led to the slaughter. There's nothing wonderful about it. If you're a sheep and you're in a truck being taken to the slaughterhouse, even if you're able to look out through a slat, through a hole in the truck or whatever, between the wood slats and the box that you're being carried in, and you see beautiful scenery, nice rolling hills and stuff, and it's really pretty. That doesn't change the fact that you're being taken to the slaughterhouse. I heard a story one time. It was actually a documentary I watched about capital punishment. And I forget where it is now. It might be in Texas, but I don't know. But there's one state, anyway, where they keep the death row people in a prison. And when they're to be executed, they put them in a van. They put them in a cage in a van, and they move them to another location where the execution is to occur. And apparently it's a really pretty drive. Like, and they're able to see, they can see out the van windows. They can look out of the cage and out the van windows, and they can actually see the scenery and everything. And apparently it's a very, it's a pretty area. They pass over a bridge with a river and stuff, you know, and there's forest, and it's just a really pretty area. And it's the kind of a place where if on a sunny Sunday afternoon, you might like to go for a drive just to take in the sights, because it's really pretty. If I lived there, it's probably a place where I'd be making videos, you know, to put on the YouTube channel here. But and they actually followed the route, and it was very pretty. But, you know, to the person sitting in that cage, they're being taken to their death. So that they may like seeing the scenery, because it'll be the first time they've seen anything like that probably in years, because they've been in a concrete cell for a long time waiting for that day when they're going to be taken over to be killed. But the thing is, I'll bet you they never lose sight of the purpose of that trip. They might kind of half-assed enjoy the scenery, but the purpose of that trip, you know, that's a one-way trip, and they know it. And the purpose of that trip is that they will be dead at the end of it, you know. But for some reason, the citizens of Canada, at least, are being brought on this trip, and they're distracted by all the pretty trees and stuff, and the pretty river, and the bridge and everything, and they're not seeing the full picture. We're being taken to the slaughter. That's what's happening here. We're being taken to the slaughter, and it isn't a good thing. Anyway, that's the bottom line. That's what's happening. Is Rocky? Where's Rocky at? There he is. He's licking himself there, giving himself a good cleaning in the morning. Anyway, that's my 2 cents anyway. Take it for whatever it's worth. It's worth at least 2 cents. Although with inflation, 2 cents don't buy what it used to. All right. Bye for now.